A blind date was never part of Emily's plans that rainy Thursday evening, but life had been so heavy on her shoulders lately that when her best friend insisted she go out, breathe, and try something new, she reluctantly agreed, hoping maybe, just maybe, something good would happen for once after months of emotional and financial struggles that left her confidence bruised and her heart afraid of hoping again. She arrived at the cozy little cafe with trembling hands, clutching her old purse that carried more receipts than cash, wearing her best dress, which was simple and slightly faded, but she still smiled because she wanted to at least feel hopeful. For a moment she wanted to believe that life could surprise her in a beautiful way. The warm glow of the cafe lights reflected softly on the window as she stepped inside and scanned the room for her date, a man she had never met, only exchanged a few polite messages with, never knowing his real identity, never knowing that this night would change her fate forever, in ways more powerful than she could ever imagine. She found a corner table and waited, her heart racing each time the door opened, wondering if she was being foolish to hope, until finally, a tall, calm, confident man walked in, a man who carried himself with quiet power, dressed in a simple black coat, with sharp eyes that looked like they understood storms. He approached with a gentle smile and introduced himself as Adrian. Emily felt immediately intimidated and shy, because he looked like someone who lived in a completely different world than hers. She didn't know she was sitting across from one of the youngest self-made CEOs in the city, someone whose decisions influenced thousands of employees, someone known in business circles as the man with the golden mind. But tonight, he looked nothing like a billionaire. Tonight, he looked like a man trying to relax, breathe, and escape his own pressures. Their conversation started awkward, like most blind dates, but soon she found herself laughing, forgetting her worries, opening up about small things, the way she loves sunsets, her dream to open a tiny art studio someday, and her habit of talking to stray cats when she walks home. Adrian listened quietly, truly listening, and for a moment it felt unreal to her, because no one had listened to her that way in a long time. But as the evening went on, her heart slowly began to sink when she realized that the menu was expensive, far more expensive than she expected, and she began calculating silently, her fingers trembling beneath the table, afraid of the ending she saw coming. When the waiter placed the bill on the table, her breath froze. She opened her purse and instantly realized she didn't have enough, not even close. A wave of humiliation washed over her like ice water. She tried to smile, tried to pretend everything was fine, but her eyes burned with shame. Adrian noticed the panic in her face, the way her fingers nervously shuffled through her old wallet, and before she could say a single word, the waiter returned and gently said, "Miss, it appears the card was declined." Emily's world shattered in a single moment. She wished the floor would open and swallow her. People from nearby tables glanced over, and her soul trembled under the weight of embarrassment. She whispered, broken, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I thought I had enough. I'm so sorry," and her voice cracked into a fragile whisper. She expected judgment. She expected him to stand up, walk away, or even laugh at her. But instead, Adrian slowly reached across the table, covering her trembling hands with his warm, steady ones, and looked at her not with pity, but with kindness that melted her fear. "Hey," he said gently, "look at me." She hesitated, then lifted her tear-filled eyes, and he smiled, not the smile of a man amused, but of someone who understood pain. "It's on me," he said softly, with a voice so calm it silenced her storm. With a simple signature, he paid the bill, then stood and walked around the table to her side, offering his hand. "Come on. I want to show you something." Confused, cheeks burning, she followed him out into the rainy night. They walked in silence for a moment beneath a city full of distant lights, and Emily finally whispered, "Why weren't you angry? Most people would have humiliated me. I ruined the night." Adrian stopped walking, turned to her, and said, "You didn't ruin anything. A bill doesn't define you. Money doesn't define worth." His voice was calm, almost sad, as though he had lived a different kind of loneliness too. Emily looked at him, still confused, still ashamed, but something inside her shifted. He then added, "When I walked into that cafe, I didn't want perfection. I just wanted something real. And tonight, I think I found it." She didn't know what to say. She stood there, eyes wet, heart aching, until he gently opened the door of a nearby closed storefront with a "For Sale" sign and said, "This used to be an art studio. It's been empty for years. Emily stared through the dusty glass, remembering her childhood dream, and Adrian watched her quietly, learning her soul through her silence. Emily had never imagined that a blind date could stir a storm inside her heart, especially on a night when she almost didn't leave her small rented room, where faded yellow walls seemed to whisper her failures back at her and the dim light above her desk flickered like her unstable hope. She stood before a cracked mirror, adjusting her simple dress, the only one she owned that still made her feel slightly beautiful, telling herself she deserved at least one evening of something different. Something gentle, something that didn't hurt. Her life had been a quiet battle for as long as she could remember, working 2 part-time jobs, skipping meals to save money, and pretending to her friends that she was fine, even when nights felt unbearably heavy. But her best friend Lily had insisted she go on this blind date, saying, "Emily, you are allowed to feel alive too." With that final push, she found herself walking under a rainy evening sky, her old shoes splashing through puddles as she approached the cozy café glowing at the corner of Maple Street, its warm light spilling onto the wet pavement like a promise. She inhaled deeply, counted to 3, and stepped inside. The scent of fresh coffee and vanilla wrapped around her, calming her anxious heart for just a moment, until she saw him. Adrian was already there, standing near the entrance as if waiting for her, and when their eyes met, she felt something unfamiliar, nervous hope. He smiled, soft, genuine, not the arrogant smirk she feared blind dates might bring, and he greeted her by name, his voice steady and warm. What Emily didn't know was that the man before her wasn't just composed and confident. He was one of the most influential young CEOs in the city, a self-made success story whispered about in business circles, a man admired and envied, but tonight, he wasn't any of those things. Tonight, he was simply Adrian, a man tired of masks, tired of being celebrated but never truly known. They sat across from each other, and though their conversation began awkwardly, with shy smiles, nervous pauses, and clumsy jokes, something magical unfolded as minutes passed. Emily laughed more freely than she had in months, caught off guard by how easy it felt to talk to him. Adrian listened with an attention that made her feel seen, really seen, and he shared pieces of himself too, small pieces, careful pieces, but real ones. Yet beneath Emily's laughter, a quiet fear brewed, because each time the waiter passed, she glanced at the menu with a tightening chest, realizing the prices were higher than she expected. She tried to ignore it, tried to stay in the moment, but worry gnawed at her. She didn't want the night to end with shame. She didn't want to look small. When the meal was over and the bill arrived, Emily felt her stomach drop. Her hands shook as she reached for her old purse, praying she had miscalculated, praying her card would go through, but she already knew. The cafe seemed to grow silent around her, and when the waiter hesitated and said, "Miss, I'm sorry, but the payment was declined," her soul shattered. Heat rushed to her face, her throat tightened, and all she could manage was a trembling whisper, I'm so sorry. I didn't know." Her voice broke, eyes burning with humiliation. She expected disappointment, maybe even cruelty. She had seen how people looked at those who struggled. But instead, Adrian's expression softened into something she didn't recognize, compassion. He gently placed his hand over hers, steadying her trembling fingers, and said in the calmest voice, "Hey. Look at me. It's okay." Emily didn't want to look up. She felt unworthy of kindness, unworthy of being there. But when she finally lifted her gaze, Adrian's eyes held no judgment, only warmth. "It's on me," he said simply, as though it was the smallest thing in the world. He paid the bill without hesitation, without making her feel less. Then, instead of ending the night, he stood and offered his hand to her. "Come. I want to take a walk." Confused, fragile, and still drowning in embarrassment, she followed him out into the gentle rain. They walked beneath street lamps that glowed like moons, and Emily finally whispered, "Why are you being so kind? You should be angry. I ruined everything." Adrian stopped, turned to her, and said, "You didn't ruin anything. Money doesn't define the value of a moment, or a person." His words disarmed her. They felt too generous, too impossible, and she could only stare, trying to understand why someone like him would speak such softness into someone like her. "I didn't come tonight for perfection," he continued quietly. "I just wanted something real." Rain droplets slid across his hair and down his coat, and in that moment, under that rainy sky, Emily saw a sadness in his eyes, a familiar sadness, the kind carried by hearts that had been alone too long. He led her down a quiet street until they stopped in front of an old storefront with a dusty window and a faded, "For Sale" sign. Emily blinked at it, confused, and Adrian asked softly, "You said you once dreamed of having your own art studio. Do you still want that?" The question nearly knocked the air from her lungs. She hadn't spoken that dream aloud in years. I don't know," she whispered. "Dreams don't survive reality very well." Her voice cracked, and she hated how broken she sounded. But Adrian didn't flinch. "Sometimes," he replied, "reality just needs a little help." Then, before she could question him, he placed a small key in her hand.